Hello and welcome to the first tutorial for GDTK stats. In this video we're going to be setting up basic stats and modifying a character controller to work with them for sprint, and also adding in a status condition of exhaustion. So we're going to start by looking at the player character here. We can see it's already got a demo controller on there that is asking for stats, but it is not using them yet. So we're going to go ahead and add a basic stats. There are a couple of different kinds of stats. We're going to be going through them as we move forward. Starting with basic stats, we're going to click here to expand the stats, and we're going to start adding the items that we need one by one, which is speed, sprint, sprint cost, and stamina. So speed is going to control our basic movement when we're not sprinting, and we're going to give that a maximum of 3 and a starting value of 1. And then we're going to add our sprint speed. And as you can see, we're automatically generating our ID with our title. You can uncheck that box and do it manually if you like. This is often just easier though. So the sprint speed is how fast we're going to be moving while we're sprinting. We're going to give that a maximum of 6, and we're going to set it as 3. Next, we need the sprint cost, which is how much it's going to cost us out of stamina over the course of a second to continue our sprinting. So we're going to leave that as a maximum of 100 and set the default value to 25. And finally, we're going to define our stamina, which is what actually controls our sprinting. So we're going to, for this one, we're going to set the start maxed checkbox here, which means whatever the maximum is, it sets that as its value at startup. And as you can see, we can just go ahead and collapse these by clicking on them as well. And before we go ahead and modify the controller, let's just have a look at what this does to begin with. So we can move our camera with our controller, and we can use WASD keys to move around. And you can see right here that this updates for us while we are in the debugger. This will show us our current value, our maximum value, and then in brackets here is going to be our special value, which is something that we'll cover quite a bit later on. So now that we have our stats set up, let's go ahead and modify our demo controller to work with them. So we can see we've already got some variables declared for it, and we're going to go ahead and get those populated. So on awake, we need to get our stats. So we'll do stats equals component basic stats. Oops. And then from that, we can get all of these actual stats. So we'll do speed equals stats.get stat. That will be speed stat ID. Okay, so what this will give us is the ability to access all of these stats and their updated values as we go through. So we're going to head on down to move, and we can see right now we're using use speed is 1, and we're going to update that to be speed.value. And then we're going to do a couple of things with sprint. So we have once sprint and is sprinting, and the reason that we have these is so that if the player runs out of stamina but still has that key down or represses that key, once sprint is available again, it will go back. It's sort of the same as pressing that jump button a frame or two before jump is actually available. So what we're going to do is if not is sprinting, So if we're not already sprinting, we're going to look at the interface manager, which is a built-in component for GDK, the free core. and we're going to do the input and get button down, and that will be the input sprint. Yep. Or if once sprint. So if we've already requested sprint, then we'll jump into this, and so we'll do if stamina.value is greater than or equal to the sprint cost .value. So we have enough stamina, so we'll go say is sprinting equals true, and we'll update the use speed to be times equal sprint.value. We could just set it equal to the value. I'm using it as a multiplier. Either way works just fine. Once sprint will be set to false because we already are sprinting. And then otherwise, if we've got that input down and we don't have enough stamina, we'll say that we do want to sprint. So once sprint equals true. So now if we are sprinting already, we'll check if not interface manager .get button, or sorry, .input .get button input sprint. So have we let go of the sprint button, or is our stamina value equal to 0? So this is what's going to stop us from sprinting. So if either of those things happen, is sprinting equals false. Otherwise, we need to make sure that we do the same thing that we did up here, which is to make sure that that use speed is our sprint speed. And we're also going to do, for both of these, we're going to remove stamina. So stamina is going that value is going to be minus equal the sprint cost that value times time that delta time. And we'll do that on both lines here. Love real-time typos. And then we're also going to update how we modify the animator. So we're going to do if, we're going to do is sprinting question mark move.z times sprint.value. Otherwise, we're going to do move z. In this particular example, we are using root motion, so that's why we apply it like that. Otherwise, we can see we have the use speed is done down here as well. Okay, so that should be enough to get us sprinting. Let's go ahead and start this back up and have a look. So we can see our stamina is at 100. We're going to move and press our left shift, and you can see us going for a nice little run and our stamina draining. Now that it's at 0, we are back to walking. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to set stamina to regenerate, so that once it stops being drained for whatever reason, it starts going back up again. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait 1 second, and let's say we add 10 stamina back per second. Now this use whole increments here is, there's an option. You can either add 10 back per second over the course of a second, or if you use whole increments, it'll be 10 per second at the end of each second. We're going to do it over the course of a second. So we're going to restart here, and we're going to just drain our stamina a little bit. We're going to wait for a second, and as you can see, it's popping back up. Now let's give our user a visual indication. So let's go over to the canvas, and we're going to do UI GTK stats, and we're going to do a stat progress bar, and we're going to name this stamina progress bar. And let's change the colors on this as well. Let's go to the fill area, and let's go ahead and make this a sort of green. Beautiful. I also want to have an icon with this, so we're going to do UI image, and this is going to be stamina icon. And to start with, we'll just give it this little die right here. We're going to set it to be into the top left corner, so we want the pivot to be 0 and 1. And we're just going to go ahead and update this guy right here real quick. And then we will set the stamina progress bar. Again, 0 and 1. And we're going to do 56, -25. That looks pretty good. And what we're going to do is we're going to drag the stamina icon into the stat slider. You can also add this manually. If you want to put a slider on and then add the stat slider control, you can do that. Now it needs to know where to get the stat from. We could drag and drop our player in, is one way to do it, or we can go into the tool registry right here and we can say register and we can give it a key. So what this means is it's going to go out to the GDTK tool registry and tell everything that it exists, so that we can come over here and say, I want to find this in the registry. This is extremely fast, way faster than doing like a find object. This comes back in less than 1 tick. So this is a much easier way to get your references. You can add that sort of thing to anything. It is free with GDTK core. So very useful tool right there. And we're going to tell it the value ID is stamina. And if you leave these other two stats blank, it will pull everything from stamina. So the minimum and maximum value will all come from stamina. In some cases, you may want that to be coming from different places. For example, when you're doing a leveling bar, you may want the minimum to come from like sort of base, maximum coming from XP to level, and the value coming from XP. But we'll cover that later. For now, this should be all we need, so we'll go ahead and press play here, and we'll see the icon update as well as the progress bar. So now if we sprint, we can see it drain, and if we wait for just a moment, we can see it coming back. So the last thing that we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to add a status condition. So in order to do that, we need to add a stats database. And we'll go ahead and open the editor and select status conditions, and we will call this exhaustion, and we'll go ahead and give it a description. You are exhausted. Stamina regeneration is lowered by half for 3 seconds. So status conditions are something that are always on the character, and they're either active or deactive. So what we're going to do is the activation condition is going to be when stamina equals 0. So it'll turn on when stamina equals 0, and it'll turn off, and we're going to say on this one, after time elapsed, and we're going to wait for 3 seconds. And when it turns on, and while it stays active, we're going to affect stat ID. So we're going to add a stat modifier, and the stat that we're going to affect is stamina. There's no requirement for it. It'll just turn on, and this is going to apply until it is removed. It's going to target the regeneration rate, and we're going to subtract a multiplier. So we're going to subtract 0.5, which is 1/2. We'll just go ahead and save that. And we'll go over to the player and make sure that we add that to its available list of status conditions. And we're going to go ahead and press play one last time to see what happens to the exhaustion. So we're going to look at stamina, and we're going to keep an eye on this regeneration rate here. And we're going to sprint until all of our stamina is gone. And now we can see the regeneration rate is at 5, and that status condition was active. It deactivated, so we're going to activate it again. There you go. Okay, so that is it for the first tutorial. We will be back with basic damage dealers and receivers in the next one. Thank you for joining.